Morning, everyone. It's 9:02 on Monday, April 27th. We currently don't have a quorum for this meeting, but we are anticipating LPEA Board Secretary John Witchell arriving approximately 10 minutes late. So we are going to take a break until we have a quorum and can proceed with business.
So tune in back
I think
at
so. So
9:10?
he indicated he'd be here by about 9:10. So
Okay,
9:10, we should be able to resume the meeting.
great.
Okay. Yeah. So let's see. You guys didn't have a quorum, so you couldn't do anything, right?
No,
So we
no,
can
we
Correct.
didn't. We haven't approved
call
the
the meeting,
agenda or
call
called,
the
yeah.
meeting to order, do the agenda. Okay, so let's call the meeting to order. The agenda has been circulated. Does anybody have any amendments they want to make to the agenda? Can you get a motion?
So move, approve the
Thank
agenda.
you.
Second.
All in favor, hold your hand up, say aye.
Aye.
Great.
Terrific. Okay, the agenda is passed. So let's go ahead into the first item.
Minutes.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the minutes have also been circulated. Can I get an amendment to do the or a motion to approve the minutes as drafted?
So move.
Second.
Second. Thank you. All in favor, hold your hand up. Say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okie dokie. Great. So pulling up the agenda. Let's go ahead and get started here.
Yeah.
The first item here was the cadence discussion. So, Graham, you want to kick us off on that?
Yeah. So, we are supposed to be part of the statement of functions of the committee is to cycle through the policies, on a regular basis. And so we started that in earnest about 4 years ago, and we only have two policies left to really fully address. We do have, as sort of for the record, and we'll get this cleaned up afterwards, we have policies 313, 359, 363, and 367 that the versions online indicate they haven't been reviewed in about 10 years, and that's not correct. We actually reviewed them about 4 years ago. So, and that was sort of when we started our big uh, universal policy overview. But so the two we have left to review are policy 104, which is the relationship between the CEO and the board of directors. And then we have policy 119, which is the statement of functions of the cooperative attorney. So I say to complete our task on that, I'll take a dive into those, and at the next meeting, I think we should pick up sort of completing that review, and then that would start our next cycle of re-reviewing everything again.
Graham, what were the 300s that you said? What can you repeat those numbers?
313, let me hold them up. 313 is reimbursement for damages. 359 is renewable generation and environmental attributes. 363 is regulations governing complaints, and 367 is energy efficiency and demand side management programs. We reviewed all of those in February of 2022, but we just didn't update the versions that are on the there. The committee didn't recommend any changes, so it sort of has last time amended, last time reviewed, and we just need to update that last reviewed uh, caption, and so we'll get that taken care of and cleaned up.
Do you think they need to be, do you think in light of leaving tri-state, do we need to take another look at those?
Oh, I mean, we will, right? Our cycle will
We
start
will.
up
Okay.
again. And so what we did last time, we used to have like 400 series policies and stuff like that, and we started with a big consolidation of a lot of
Oh,
those
right.
higher numbered policies. And so we had a real kind of holistic view that we took, and that, obviously life is what gets in the way when you're busy making plans. It's
Right.
sort of taken us about 4 years to cycle through all of that. And those
Yeah.
last two remaining, I think we should sort of close those out.
Okay.
So I think, so I will plan on putting those on the next agenda the next time the committee meets. And then I will, um, yeah,
No,
and
we can just start
yeah,
plowing through them again.
yeah, plow through those two. And then so that, I think we just need to put a bow on that part of the committee's obligations. And then so to move on to the next topic we have, as you recall, we had a community solar garden program policy that had basically been non-functional under Tri-State's obligations. We were capped out at what we could do, and Tri-State had policies that sort of overruled it, and our wholesale electric service contract with Tri-State overruled it. And so we now have the opportunity to promulgate a new modern community solar garden program. And so I recommend to have staff sort of start working on that. We've got, I think, Steve Smith and, probably a lot of people under Dan, who's here today, if we want to hear directly from Dan on this. But, sort of have them start looking at what current best practices in the industry are, and work on sort of promulgating a policy that probably start at the staff level and percolate itself up to the committee. I would say late summer, early fall would probably be as fast as we would be able to get anything to the committee.
And is this policy spec but isn't this policy about really about access? Who gets the lower cost solar?
No, what it really was about how a third party community solar developer could
Uh,
approach for interconnection. Rather than, and so there's frankly a lot of ways to look at it, right? Whatever sort of small scale, you want to have it address small scale interconnections. Do you want to have it address aggregate net metering, virtual net metering, things of that nature, right? And so it's really, it was a fairly, you know, as we looked at it at staff level, the old one had plenty of problems if it was going to be, if people could just come knock on our door and have an expectation of entitlement to develop certain things, right? And so that's, I think, how we want to view it, is like what sort of small scale third party generation interconnectivity do we want to have, and how do we want to promote that? So I would anticipate it being a fairly lengthy, robust discussion, around this. It's not going to be something that kind of just comes up overnight.
so j just to bang on that a little bit, that seems okay. So just to play that, okay, so I have a couple questions there. So just to play that back, so number one, the issue is to set policy for third parties whose intention is to come in, interconnect to our grid, and sell their energy to our off-takers ostensibly at a reduced price. And how do we want to set the stage? What do we want to allow? And then what are the rules and guidelines for allowing that?
Yes. I mean, that's because that's that. I mean, that was sort of the idea, right? I mean, LPA can produce whatever community solar gardens it wants as the generator, and have it sort of off take, and off, typically who our participants will largely be, frankly, dictated by the tax credits you can get that will make it the most affordable to everyone, and things of that
Hmm.
nature, right? For us. But the idea was, the previous policy was about third-party community solar gardens.
Okay. Um, so I might, certainly want to go forward, at least as you start to communicate and socialize it internally. I would maybe not, just add third-party community solar gardens, because when you said that, when I saw this item, I thought, oh, we're talking about Sunnyside today. And so just, I think you'll, I would, but that's a minor issue. I guess I don't love that going down to staff for that decision. And the reason that I don't love that is staff, and as is true for all staff who are responsible for the running of grids, have a strong bias and have skin in the game. Right? Fundamentally, when you let a third party generator come in and interconnect, you are taking a kilowatt hour away from LPA. Right? You can dance around that as much as you want, but you are taking a kilowatt hour. You are taking revenue away, and all staff has an inherent bias against allowing that, and they have skin in the game. Right? They have a stake in that conversation, because although if you came in and did 5 megawatts, nobody cares. But if I came in and I said, hey, King Energy wants, again, to reassure everybody, we're not coming in, but we are absolutely the problem in Maryland, and we are exactly what you're talking about. If we were to come into LPA and say, hey, we want to do 50 megawatts, and we're prepared to deliver energy at a significant discount below what LPA is required to provide, what LPA is currently able to do, we would get take rate, and you would wake up 5 years from now and you would have the total load cut by 25%. And at those levels, that means staff cut. That means RIFs. That means long-term structural changes to how LPA works. And so I think that relegating that to staff is a mistake. So what I would suggest that we do here, and I'm not sure exactly how to do that, and this is where the conversation opens up. That's my problem that I want to solve here, which is how can we get enough guidelines in staff's hands that they can then solve for the problem we want them to solve, not just broadly solve for something called solar gardens or community solar. Is that done here? Is that done at a board level? And I'm open for comments and thoughts here, because I don't see an obvious way, like it's not crystal clear how we would solve that. But I think if we leave it to staff, they will come back with a narrow view of this and not an expansive view.
John, just
Go ahead.
go ahead. I was just going to say real quick, at the end of the day, it would be a policy, so it would initiate from here and then go to the board for approval. So if we have ideas, we can initiate from here and then talk to Chris, the CEO, to run it back down to staff. So in Maryland, just curious question, the 50 megawatts, when you're doing that, there is a charge for infrastructure and overhead. Is it fair enough, or?
Yeah, and I think that's what Graham's talking about. You can
Yeah.
go to different states, and they all, depending on the state of their grid, they all have very different incentives.
Correct.
Some are quite discouraging. They really don't want it. Some are quite encouraging, because any generation is good generation.
Yeah.
Some fast track it if you're below a certain size. Some that Graham's touching on a point. If you asked 50 grid operators their position on community solar, you would get 51 different answers.
Okay.
So he's right. We absolutely need to send staff in to do the study of best practices. There's a lot of them out there, and I'm not discouraging that at all. I just want to clearly define the problem that they're being
Right.
asked to solve.
Right. And in anything we do, my example is I've worked building substation and transmission line for data centers, and we had contribution and aided construction that covered the infrastructure and had a rate that we never subsidized data centers. So I think I understand what you're saying is we need to make sure that no member is disadvantaged and everybody pulls their fair share. And I think that would be something to come out of this as a guideline to the CEO. But I'll let Graham. I think Graham wanted to say something.
So a couple of examples in New Jersey, I'm required to sell 30% of all of my energy to LMI community members at no less than a 25% discount below the retail rate.
Okay.
That is
yeah.
that is a community solar, and the punishment for me failing to do that is extraordinary. It's like 5x the revenue or some huge number. And so you can lay down a lot of rules like that. And so, for example, if we have we could lay down a rule like that, and that might be really constructive in our community.
Yeah.
And to say, well, if you want to build community solar, you better be serving the most disadvantaged communities. And by serving, I mean real discount, not some nickel dime bullshit here, right?
Correct.
Well, I have a question. So, I mean, if we did have a developer come in with a big project, I mean, we would charge them some fee, right, to interconnect and using our transmission and stuff, correct?
You
we
can.
Yeah, we currently have interconnection, as we've sort of gone towards independence, we have some interconnection regulations, right, that sort of describe how a person would interconnect to our distribution system. But right now, we would have to come up with a PPA where LPEA buys that electricity from them. They can't pass it through directly to our members, right? So, Joe, you can't sort of have somebody put a gas turbine in Archuleta County and you buy the power off of it in La Plata County and wheel it across our distribution system.
Okay.
Right now, our certificate of public convenience and necessity says that we are the only entity that's entitled to sell retail electricity in our counties.
Yeah.
And so the community solar garden sort of creates an opportunity for, members to participate with a third party generator. And so I think John is right. And so, so first off, right, I think David kind of touched on this and everybody probably has, is that we really kind of need Chris in this conversation to sort of figure out where we're going at a strategic level. And it might be good to sort of actually, as a topic, start this out at the board and have the board have a sort of a strategic view of it and then delegate that down to, perhaps delegate that down to the Committee on Policies to figure out what it's going to look like at a policy level and have the Committee on Policies work on the details with staff and then bring it back to the board. But I mean, John is probably right in sort of, I mean, he's right. Is this going to start with board priorities, right, which are local, renewable, affordable generation, and work their way down to staff to kind of come up with a policy that meets that? Or are they going to come with staff sort of taking nothing more explicit than local, renewable, affordable and trying to figure that out and work it up, right? And I think John has a point that perhaps merely saying local, renewable, and affordable is not enough information to get it inside the ballpark on the first draft. So, and so I think then that becomes sort of a question for Chris and Nicole, or whoever ends up being the president after the new board is seated, to kind of think about what direction they want to move with that, as a because ultimately, as the one thing everybody's on the same page at is this is a board policy decision of what we want to prioritize.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to see, some, I guess, if we have a meeting or a cow or whatever, have the best practices, glossary, whatever it is, just so we can have a place to start.
Yep.
And that seems to be something staff could pull together, I guess.
Yeah. And so I think that'd sort of be up to Chris to sort of direct staff of what sort of
Okay.
information to prepare and present to.
So do we need some kind of a motion then to kind of put this in motion, so to speak?
I mean, I think we can be a little less formal than that, and
Okay.
sort of have, I mean, the way things hit our full board agenda under our policies is for the board president and the CEO to discuss those together. I mean, it wouldn't be out of order for this board to say, for this committee to say, boy, we really, really want you to do this, but I don't think it's within this committee's purview to say, to sort of give marching orders to the CEO and the board president. We would just sort of make a recommendation, which
John, is your last, yeah, as I'm anticipating you're not going to do this again, but as your last act, maybe you could make that request, I guess.
Yeah, I will own that. I will take responsibility for an informal conversation with Chris to say we strongly we dis let me get this right. We discussed it in the committee. We decided that there was no action to be taken at the committee level, but the individuals within the committee are encouraging you to prepare something to get deeper guidance from the board as a whole as a first step rather than go immediately to staff.
Yeah.
Is that the guts of it?
Yep.
Brad, you got anything to add to this conversation? That's okay.
all right.
Okay. Discussed. Onward. Roman numeral 3, item C, electric service regulations review.
Yeah. So that is, something that we kind of go through from time to time. The staff has brought a few pinch points to my attention on the electric service regulations. And so my recommendation is that I get with staff and compile a list of their suggestions. And I will, I'll come back to the policy or come back to the committee on policies once we've got something a little more concrete from them.
What are we talking about here?
Yeah.
So the electric service
background.
regulations. So let me do this. Share my screen real quick. All right. So see our general governing documents here. We have our bylaws, our articles of incorporation, and then we have our electric service regulations, right? And so these talk to our members and our staff about various operational issues like metering, late payment collections, things of that nature. So access to property, uh, you know,
So this is just like some of the stuff Ted and that wave was doing where there was just a lot of little ticky-tacky cleanup here.
yeah. So for example, a issue that has arisen is this, right? So we have, adjustments for metering errors, right? And so if our meter runs too fast, we'll go back and correct it for the member not to exceed 6 months. And if it runs too slow, we will catch the member up for being underbilled, not to exceed 2 months or 6 months. So sometimes these could have gone on for 2 or 3 years, right? And so it's nice to have that sort of specific look back window. And we say here, this is how far we're going to look back. Now, sometimes we have rate errors, right? Where people are placed on the improper rate. And so the staff would like to have something like this where we can say, we only refund your rate for 6 months if you're found to be on the wrong rate, right? Somebody could be on the wrong rate for 10 years. And so we want to have a sort of hard and fast look back period to point to, something that staff has requested. I mean, it doesn't happen very often, but we have 40,000 members. Sometimes those things happen. And so that is the level of detail that we're kind of looking at here. And so the staff who ends up administering these things on a day-to-day basis knows where their friction points are and will have suggestions on addressing those friction points.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And you're just previewing that to us now.
Just previewing that, just saying, hey, I think this is something that we ought to put relatively far up in our priority,
Okay. And there's no action required today.
No, just that was sort of more of an FYI, right? And I know that this committee in its current population is sort of winding down. So no, it's not expecting anybody to sort of we don't really have anything specific that we can accomplish between now and our next board meeting. So sort of think, and we don't have any obvious emergencies. So just wait until the committee gets reassembled after the new board is seated.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Well,
Will
if
we
there's
need do we need to tentatively schedule a meeting for May then? May 25th.
So on the one hand, right? Well, one of the three members here is up for re-election, right? And so I can't 100% guarantee continuity of this current board. I would say, based on not having any particular emergencies that we need to try and get addressed before before we have new committee assignments and things like that, that is probably just best to wait until
June. Okay.
or even until after June, when the new committee assignments come out, and we can sort of figure out who's going to be on the committee and what times of the month work for them to meet, etc.
Okay.
There's nothing particularly pressing.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, if there is no further business, meeting
Hasta la
adjourned.
vista.
Thanks.
Hasta la vista, baby. See you
Thank
guys
you.
at the board meeting.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you. Yeah, thanks.
Thank y'all. Bye.